Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Goodale. This is Jacques Crocker. We're two of the three that built a game called Scrabbly. This is kind of the story of how we built it and the technologies we used, and that's about it. So Scrabbly. Scrabbly, scrab.ly, is a massively multiplayer crossword game, for lack of a less overloaded term. We originally built the first version in 48 hours. There's a programming competition called Node Knockout. Node Knockout was centered on a piece of software called Node.js, which is essentially a JavaScript executable, but runs server-side with an asynchronous I/O layer on top of it that allows for things like server connections and file I/O and stuff of that nature. So 4 of us on the team, me, Jacques, Damon Cortese on the coding side, and then Aviel Ginsberg did all of our design. So this is Scrabbly. Scrabbly, as I said, is a massively multiplayer game. Everybody plays all at once. So you can see I've got my world mini-map up here in the corner. This is my personal game here. Not particularly high on the score right now, as you can see from some of our higher players. We actually have a couple of people that have written bots to play the game. We had to take them off of the leaderboard because they were scoring too high, so there's actually a second leaderboard for them that's only accessible via API. It's a little ridiculous, but awesome. Love you guys. Love you. Just to give you an idea, this has been live for approximately 2 months, actually, as of today. The world as it stands right now, that yellow box is where my screen was, essentially. The world as it stands right now is somewhere around 5.9 million tiles played. Every white pixel you see on the screen is 1 tile played. Those blue squares right there represent an average 15 by 15 crossword game board. So needless to say, it doesn't stop there, but it actually keeps going for a bit. And a bit more. And let me see. S3. It'll be the death of me.
Yeah, we have a few scaling issues.
Yeah. So as you might imagine, the density starts to increase over here as you get towards 0, 0. But you can see people actually play this in a number of ways. So you've got people that are playing structures like lines. You've got people that are making shapes. You've got, if I can find them. Oh, so that's somebody playing. We show you exactly where people are playing in real time. So those green pings were somebody playing a word. Right now we have approximately 600 to 650 people playing simultaneously.
We wrap this entire board in basically a Raphael canvas object, so we can basically draw on it to show activity and...
assuming there's a,
Yeah.
So we do use the standard TWL06 competition dictionary. Those words are in fact in there. We're not actually making any special allowances there. So that's us. Like I said, this is an entirely open standard app. The front end's HTML5, CSS, as Jacques mentioned. We're using Canvas and Raphael in order to do dynamic things, like the pings you see on the map. If we had actually centered on somebody, I'm afraid to go back to the board at this point, but if we had centered on somebody that was playing, you could see them place their tiles in real time and play their words. So the only thing we're using a language other than JavaScript for is map generation right now, because ImageMagic's bindings in JavaScript are a little young.
It's sort of a hybrid at the moment too. We fill in the map using JavaScript. So as people play, we draw in the map. But right now our image server generators are behind, so it kind of messes things up. But there's some work to be done. Yep.
We've got some rough corners, but that's okay. So, because we coded this to standards, it works in pretty much any modern browser right out of the box. It works in most recent versions of Chrome, Safari, Firefox, obviously, 3.6 through 2, 3 and up. Works really well in the latest nightlies, by the way, so grab a minefield if you haven't.
Don't forget Opera. It works in Opera.
Does it work in Opera?
Yeah.
It works in Opera. All right. So how do you build something like this in 48 hours? Lots of open source. Note on the back end, we're talking to MongoDB as our primary backing store. MongoDB offers geospatial indexing and querying, so we can do bounding box queries for things like what section of the world you're looking at very, very quickly. Even quicker now that that they found a really awesome patch to a bug we were seeing. So thanks, guys. The front end is built on jQuery, pretty much purely, I think.
Yeah, jQuery, jQuery UI are the primary frameworks that we use.
So, and then we're using Express and Connect as frameworks. They're roughly the equivalent of Sinatra and Rack if you're in the Ruby world. So we have, a middleware stack, and we have a Sinatra-esque web framework to build on. So front end is entirely Java, JavaScript. We've already covered a lot of this. Front end is entirely a jQuery client-side web application. We use Canvas and Raphael for the animation element of the elements. All of our live communication is done via WebSocket. We're actually using a service called Pusher because during the competition we ran into some scaling issues with the hosting providers. They were still new to hosting Node. They had some caps that unfortunately our app sort of plowed right through once people found it and started playing it. So these guys have been awesome. We integrated them in like 15 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah, we got
something trivial.
15 minutes.
Yeah, and they've they've handled an awful lot of messages for us. So thanks, guys. So backend is Node running, as I said, Express and Connect. It's a simple JSON API. Consists of a couple of different queries. MongoDB obviously stores all our game state. I already covered all that. See, I keep doing this talk out of order. So there's a lot of, MongoDB, if you're looking to do this sort of stuff, is really great. There's a lot of companies that are doing hosting on it. In our case, obviously, we're their ideal use case because we don't even have like the spherical deformities of a normal world. We're literally a flat 2D plane, which is infinitely large, and yet it all still works, which is kind of cool. So this is the world. Specifically, this is a series of 1 hour screenshots that are animated together. It's about 500 hours worth of gameplay here animated. See if you can pick out the point when Jason Kotke tweeted us. Wait for it. And hey, there it goes. Suddenly everything sort of lights up and the whole world gets really big. So we, like I said, we see, how long did it take us to get to our first million?
Took us
couple weeks,
yeah,
probably.
Couple weeks, but then
yeah, we're up to about probably 1 million tiles every 2.5 to 3 days at this point. So it's kind of crazy. For those who are curious, if you haven't done programming competitions, great way to crank something out in a really short amount of time. This is our playtesting setup, by the way. We went out and bought 5 copies of Scrabble and cut the crossword game, and cut the edges off so we could jam the boards together, and then ran around finding everybody we could that we knew and drag them in for playtesting. That is a URL to a blog entry on the entire experience by him, so highly recommended reading. He tells it much better than I do. So, yeah, in terms of general experience for programming competitions, 48 hours isn't very much. Do everything ahead of time. But because of the openness of the technology and the fact that we could, read up on all this, we could practice it, we could look at the source code, we could, figure out how these things work, even though we couldn't commit digital assets, code or design assets to, to disk, to file ahead of time. We were able to test things out. We were able to experiment. We were able to find the things that worked ahead of time so that when the competition came, we could, rip right in and start implementing. So, and frankly, I don't think we've really even scratched the surface with what we can do with this game. So we're looking forward to taking it even further.
Yeah, and the key thing to keep in mind too is like the actual interface and stuff is there's nothing fancy there. It's just straight up CSS, background images, swapping out, standard spriting. So it's really just stuff every like veteran web developer has been doing for many years, just kind of used for a different purpose.